Thank you, everybody. My name is Yousef. I'm here to discuss with you and tell you more about the actual Azure platform. Before I start, I want to tell you a bit about myself. I am one of many people who have built this platform. We started this journey in 2006. We were a small team. We saw some of the trends that the previous speakers spoke of, actually. We anticipated the need to build these large-scale, secure systems. So we started this whole journey. And I am personally very happy to be here to tell you more about where we are in this journey and how we are providing more services for you locally in Korea as well. The world is complicated. There are a lot of issues out there, a lot of opportunities out there in terms of consumer expectations and the pace of innovation. You all know how things move quickly. And all the things you see behind me on the slide, from the regulations, the rules they are, and how we can do things, to the need to connect all sorts of devices. And all of us in this room have at least one device on us as we speak. This complexity also has, or opens, if you will, an opportunity for a digital transformation you have been hearing about. From engaging your customers and your employees to improving the actual processes to ultimately invent new products and services. And this last step, although it comes a bit later on, is really what the cloud is all about. New opportunities and new scenarios, which I hope by the end of my talk and this day, you see examples of that we have been seeing many other companies in the world starting to use. So let me discuss with you the journey to the cloud. Now, the phrase, by the way, for me personally is very appropriate, if you will, because we've been on this journey, if you will. In Microsoft, we view the cloud across a wide spectrum. Productivity solutions, as you can see as an example of Office 365, of email, collaboration, communication, is one big category of the cloud. Business applications, as in Dynamics and CRM applications, is another category. There's a platform itself, which is what Microsoft Azure is all about. It runs all these services and is available to you as consumers to use it as well for yourselves. And of course, and a very important scenario is data intelligence. Creating information out of the data and opening opportunities out of the data mining, if you will. And of course, an Uber umbrella, an Uber theme is the ability to manage the cloud in a very secure fashion. So security and management with all the tooling and products, you must have this to make this thing a reality. The combination of all of this is what we call the Microsoft Cloud. And the foundation of it is Microsoft Azure. It is the platform. It is where you run the data, run the application, and access the data. And there are three pillars to Azure. You see them on the slide behind me. The global nature of Azure, the trusted nature of Azure, and the hybrid nature of Azure. I'm going to spend some time now explaining every term and give you specific examples of this. So let's talk about the global nature of Azure and why it's important to you and to your customers. Most of our businesses are global nowadays. I am sure in this room we have people from multiple companies who have maybe tens, if not hundreds of branch offices around the globe. Your customers are probably global. Your employees are probably mobile all over the place. So the platform that serves your needs better be global as well. And Azure is very global. It's one of the biggest clouds on the face of the earth. Behind me is the description of the locations, of the regions of Azure. A region in Azure is one of more data centers. Some are few megawatts, some are tens, if not 100 megawatt. That's what a region is. It's a location that you or your employees can decide to use to store data, to run your applications. And if you put some data in a region, it stays in the region. You can decide if you want to move it around or not, but it stays there. And because, as you can see, we have a global coverage here. We started the journey in the US, expanded to Europe and to Asia, and I'm very happy to announce today the general availability of the 2 regions in Korea. So in addition to the global fleet we now have 2 additional regions which are available locally in Korea as well. From a software perspective, all these look the same. You can run your application anywhere. You can locate your data anywhere. But there are usually examples or reasons why you want to be in your local regions. And the 3 best examples I can give you are these. For Azure, we give you the most complete platform you can really think of. Guys, Azure is not just a bunch of virtual machines and infrastructure as a service. It's a wide spectrum of services. I'm going to give you a picture of them in a second. It's the most complete of infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, and finished services like SaaS. I'm also happy to say, to tell you as well that Office 365 will be available in Korea in Q2 of this calendar year. That's an example of a high-end software as a service that's also available on the platform. Another reason why you want to have a region local to you is data residency. As I mentioned earlier, if you decide to put your data in a given region, it stays there. We can optionally replicate it for you in a nearby region, but you decide that. We will never take the data from one place, put them somewhere else. You know where things are. So residency is very important. You want to keep them within the country boundary, you can do so. And you want to make sure data from a different country does not come to your region. You can also decide that as well. And lastly, performance. Laws of physics. As you know, latency is important. When you bring up your phone and want to go to a website somewhere, the distance between you and that website is very important. It's truly physics. So having a local region really helps you with performance. Bandwidth, but most importantly, with latency as well. So these are the reasons why you might want to use Azure, and specifically why you want to use it in a local region. Okay. So let me tell you more about how the global picture really is built. So we have the regions around the globe, and we keep adding, by the way. So we have more regions coming, and as a previous slide showed, we have different types of regions, but ultimately it's the same thing. You decide where your data resides. But importantly, these regions don't live in isolation. They're connected. They're connected through a global network, because you cannot have a first-class cloud without a first-class network. So we have a global wide area network that connects all our regions and many cities around the world. We are in more than 130 locations around the world. Which means when you access your resources in Azure, regardless where you might be anywhere around the globe, you are very close to the edge of our network. Your mobile phone will go through the local ISP to a local edge node. And once you hit one of the 30 nodes of our network, you are there. You can then go from anywhere to anywhere in Azure. And this is true for Azure services that you may put in there, or Office 365, or CRM, or whatever the case may be. We own subsea cables. We have optical networks around the globe. And we run one of the biggest IP networks, Internet Protocol networks, anywhere to get you to those resources. And you may want to ask, why do you care about this? Again, you have to get your stuff. You have to get your data. So a first-class network is really a must. Lastly, this network is peered with thousands of ISPs around the globe. An ISP is an internet service provider. It's the entity that your phone is speaking to or your home PC is speaking to. So we peer with thousands of those, which means you are as close to Azure as possible as far as latency is concerned. Again, this is very important once you start moving more and more things to the cloud. You look at this and now and say, but how about if I want to bypass the internet? Can I connect privately to Azure? And the answer, of course, is yes. We also have an extensive set of entry points into our network through the Express Route service, where our customers can connect to us privately and securely, bypassing the internet completely. And this is very important for a number of scenarios, especially back-end processing, where you want to be able to get your data directly, bypassing the internet. So typically, as a consumer, we all reach the cloud through the internet. And for back-end processing, you can reach us directly through ExpressRoute as well. And the beauty of this, by the way, are two things. One is once you enter the network, you can go anywhere in our global network on our backbone. You don't have to go worry about getting your own bandwidth and wires, whatever. We take care of it. And two, we have a large set of partners, 70 and plus, around the globe, that are probably your telecommunication provider, who are also our partner. And we have pre-positioned all of this, and you can connect to us sometimes as fast as a day to be part of the back-end network that we have. And behind me are some of our partners. Actually, the list is much bigger than that. So in a nutshell, before I move to the next section, we have a global set of regions around the globe, basically, a big number of regions, connected by a first-class wide area network. You are very close to us in terms of we peer with all the ISPs. You can get your resources very quickly. And you can use the network for your own back-end processing as well by having private connectivity as well. Guys, this is a multi-year investment. We did not just do this thing in a day or two. The core network actually predates Azure and Microsoft. And then we expanded it, and then we added private connectivity and all the partnerships you see behind me as well. Okay, so I hope I convinced you that we are global. We are almost everywhere. Let me talk to you about a different question, the trust question. I told you earlier that I was one of the folks who started this project more than 10 years ago. And you know the first question we used to get from day one was always the same. So you're going to build me something, but do I trust you? Do I trust you with my data? Do I trust you with my applications or mission-critical applications? So from day one, we invested heavily in answering this question along multiple dimensions, and you see some of them behind me here. Security is extremely important to us. The platform allows applications to be isolated from each other because we know that you want your stuff to be separate from anybody else's. You view the cloud as your own virtual data center with your own virtual networks. And the only entity that can control them is you. Privacy is extremely important. Again, you have the credentials. You can go do whatever you want to. And with the other aspects as well, which I want to touch on in the next slide, around compliance, transparency, and reliability. As you probably know, there are a number of compliance certifications out there that you can go and trust that can say something about the platform. And I'm happy to say that Azure has the most extensive compliance certifications of any cloud provider anywhere around the earth. Nobody in the industry has as many of these in terms of breadth or depth than Azure. This spans the spectrum from the global compliance certifications, ISO, SOC 1, SOC 2, etc., to specific ones for the US government, which also spans a big spectrum, to industry ones, and you can look at the spectrum of industry compliance out there, from healthcare to credit card processing to movie industry to regional certifications as well. Multiple different countries have different certification regimes as well. Why would you care about this? For every logo behind me, there's an auditing function. There's an entity somewhere you can go trust, a third-party entity that audits us, that certifies that we follow the rules here. And we are very transparent with this. For example, if you're a bank and you're audited, you have the right to see our audits as well. We don't hide anything from you. Lastly, to gain these certifications, for every logo behind me, we have to be audited every few months, every 6 months, etc. So it's a lifestyle. It's not a one-time thing. It's not a marketing slide, guys. This is what we do now for our daily lives here. One specific aspect of the trust area I want to point out to you, which is very unique to Azure, is a Microsoft Azure IP advantage, where IP stands for intellectual property in this case. In a nutshell, there's a class of customers, especially the smaller customers, the ISVs, who are developing software using open source software, who are combining also pieces together, running it on Azure. We provide them intellectual property protection. We use our extensive IP patent portfolio to benefit and to protect our customers. For example, you can use any of 10,000 plus Microsoft patents to defend yourself if you are being sued. And we have built it in such a way as even for the future as well, to keep this guarantee going forward as well. That's an example how we use our intellectual property portfolio, not to push others, if you will, but to protect and add value to our customers. And one more thing. This is an example how the cloud changes things. In the old days, you could do your software, put them in your data center, maybe nobody can see it. Now you put them in a public cloud. Everybody can get to them, but others may try to push you in one angle or the other, and we're here to protect you. And again, this is quite unique to Azure. So who's using us? Frankly, a lot of people. More than 90% of the Fortune 500 now use Azure. More than 80% of the world's largest banks use Azure. And 70% of the biggest of financial institutions use Azure as well. What this is saying is that it's not just a company hosting a website or putting a marketing campaign. This is saying that customers now are using Azure for enterprise mission-critical applications. Again, going back to my personal history, if you asked me 5 years ago, yeah, they were using us, but not the real mission-critical stuff. Now it's truly mission-critical. When a bank is using your platform, you know it's real. Of course, we have also customers local in Korea. And this is a sampling of Korea customers with Azure. Some have been in production for a long time in remote data centers. Others are were part of our preview within the country as well. And you can see some of the logos here. It's quite an extensive set as well. I have been talking a lot about how great Azure is. And after my talk, you're going to hear from these 5 customers. They're going to come on stage, and they will tell you how they are using Azure, using their own words. And it's a wide spectrum, by the way, from big IoT scenarios to gaming, to medical solutions, to hybrid solution using on-prem and the cloud, and to SaaS solutions as well. And again, so please stay tuned beyond this talk. You'll hear them themselves telling you their experience of using Azure themselves. I told you about the global nature of Azure and the security trust aspect. want to tell you about the hybrid aspect, and this is also very unique to Microsoft. Go back to my personal story here. When we started this cloud stuff, we realized something early on, that customers have resources on premises already, correct? I'll wait for the phone to stop. Thank you. Customers have resources on premises already. All of us have stuff, right? From day one, we realized that we want to build a global cloud that extends, that adds value, that opens new opportunities to what you have, but not necessarily replacing everything you have. Because there are scenarios where you may want to keep things on premises. There are scenarios where you want to go expand, not necessarily replace what you have. So the unique hybrid capabilities of our platform span a spectrum of things you can do seamlessly between what you have on premises and the public cloud. And without going through every detail here, they span the spectrum of technology, virtualization, identity, manageability, across this whole spectrum, and connectivity as well from the networking perspective as well. And again, this value proposition is important to us because we realize you have, and will continue to have assets on premises. And the cloud is there to help you expand the business. The spectrum, by the way, goes from the public Microsoft Azure all the way to Azure Stack. Azure Stack is a set of Azure technologies that you can buy, software and hardware, to instantiate locally in your own data centers. They connect seamlessly to the public cloud, and they share technologies across the spectrum, from virtualization, manageability, identity, programming tools, and so forth. And again, this is a unique value proposition here. And this is an example of how you can view the resources across the spectrum, regardless of the location. This is actually the Operational Management System, OMS, for Microsoft. You can use it to manage the whole spectrum, Azure Public Cloud, Azure Stack on-premises, as well as third-party public clouds, by the way, because we know you use also other public clouds. Okay. So I want to tell you now about Azure itself. So far, I told you about its properties, but what the thing really is. A key part of Azure is the ability to provide application innovation. It's actually a platform to run applications, ultimately. You can run your own virtual machines. More interestingly, you can combine them with platform as a service services or mix and match with SaaS services. So it's about innovation, building new apps, if you will, and running your apps on top of them. It's also a set of services that provide data intelligence and AI. It gives you the ability to store vast amount of data, but importantly, to extract value out of the data through machine learning and the like. And as I will show you a bit more, you can run any piece of software you want on this thing. Open source, Linux, Windows, your call. And I already touched on the important aspect of trust and where things are. So a bit more details. I'm going to show you this slide and slightly more details from there on. This is a simplified architecture picture of what Microsoft Azure is all about. It's simplified for a reason. You'll see from the next slide. The bottom box here is the core platform. Think of it as infrastructure as a service. And you see how proportions of the slide by design, guys. The infrastructure as a service is only the bottom part of the platform. That's where you can run virtual machines. You can access basic storage. You access networking and virtualization of the network, and where the basic security foundation of the platform lie. As a user, as a developer, you can decide or opt to use only this part of the system if you want to. Perhaps more interestingly, there's a large set of services built on the platform that are available to you as PaaS services, platform as a service services. And this span a very wide spectrum. I give you a sampling here. From mobile backend to IoT scenarios, microservices to run very lightweight applications, serverless applications. I'm throwing buzzwords at you guys. High-performance computing, media, identity, etc. I'll show you the next slide of the completeness of this side of the house. And then, of course, we have developer tools. Our DNA, our background is in empowering developers to add value and write applications. We have a wide set of applications and development tools geared toward Azure. And as I mentioned earlier, this spectrum is available in some form in Azure Stack on-premises as well. It's a very powerful story here. Now, I'm going to show you a next slide. Next slide is an eye chart, too complex. But it tells you a bit more what really Azure really has. Has all these regions I told you about. All over the globe, you decide where things lie. It has the infrastructure services. This is the IaaS picture, but blown up in a bit more details. Every icon, by the way, is a service. Every icon for the developers in the room is available through open APIs, actually the RESTful APIs, HTTP. The language bindings for it is available in GitHub today for free. And we have Java, .NET, you name it, available to access any of those services. For some, this is Azure. A bunch of services, a bunch of IaaS services running on regions. For everybody else's, really, there's a rich set of services, more than 60 nowadays, that make up the totality of what the platform is. Because I'm going to pause for a second. This is what Azure behind me is. You can mix and match any of those services to run your business. You can write new applications. You can take your legacy apps and put them on Azure. You can do a hybrid solution. You name it. Bit of note, when I used to give a talk about Azure 6, 7 years ago, I could tell you exactly what Azure is. Actually, I can't anymore. It's such a rich platform. But the good news is you don't have to use the whole thing. You see what your business needs are, and you can mix and match and grow with the platform as well. We continue to grow the platform. We add features, software features, upgrades, improvements, literally every day in Azure. Literally, guys. As we speak, new things are being improved, either an update to the software or new features, whatever the case may be. So, of all of this, I'm going to give you a couple of examples just to make this a bit more concrete. These are 2 sample services of the previous busy slide. And I only spent time on one of them. But in both cases, you can go to a portal. You can go to azure.com right now if you want to. You can start using it for free or with a credit card, etc. And you choose what service you want. And depending on the persona, if you are an IT operator or a developer, you can decide what you want to do with the platform. In this example, on the left-hand side, I'm showing Azure Site Recovery, a service that you can use to take assets you may have in the cloud or on-premises, a bunch of machines you have on-premises, and ask Azure to give you, effectively, a disaster recovery backup in the cloud in case you lose what you have on-premises. Or your VMs can be packaged, moved to the cloud, backed up to the cloud. You decide where they go. Remember, it's your decision. And you decide when to recover from them. You can recover them back in the cloud as a backup site recovery or somewhere else on premises as well. That's one of the services, guys. We have many of those. And again, what you do with them depends what you want. The other example I'm showing here is DocumentDB, a document-oriented databases, which is great for a bunch of scenarios where you need that kind of model, if you will. Again, that's more of a developer focus. The Azure Site Recovery is more of an IT operator focus. And we have many of those in Azure as well. I touched on the fact that we are open. Do you guys know that 1/3 of the virtual machines in Azure are running Linux? You decide what you want your virtual machines to be. In the slide behind me, you're going to find 1 or 2 logos which are Microsoft products. The rest are open source products. We know customers want to run what they want to run in the cloud. And the reason we call it Microsoft Azure, not the previous name, Windows Azure, is that we believe strongly in running what you want to run in the cloud. You can start with Windows Server, Red Hat, Canonical, and other Linux distributions. You can decide to use SQL, MySQL, Hadoop, you name it. And you can go up the stack. You choose your programming language of choice. You choose your development environment, and you can go from there. And as I mentioned earlier, every component in Azure, every service, is accessible through RESTful APIs. For the techies in the room, that means all the tooling you know, how to do HTTP, basic web programming is what you use to access any service in Azure. Plus the language bindings of your choice, .NET, Java, JavaScript, Ruby, PHP, you name it. This was part of the transformation we went through ourselves in the company, guys. Part of the cloud journey is to basically be with you when running your applications. It's not what we want, it's what you want, to be frank. And the cloud, to be honest, is a service. So we no longer ship a piece of software and a CD and give it to you. We give you a platform, and it's a shared responsibility to run the services over the platform. So you can choose what software you want to run on the platform. You can also choose what development environment you want to use to program the platform. Visual Studio, for those of you familiar with the programming tools, is very rich programming environment and has a lot of plugins, development scenarios geared toward Azure, and all the services you've seen me show in the previous slide. We use GitHub extensively. All our documentation, all our APIs, language bindings are actually in GitHub, the service, GitHub that many of you know, if you will. Of course, you can use Eclipse if you want to. You can use Chef and Puppet. You can use PowerShell with some Microsoft technology. You can mix and match. I know, I'm saying a lot of tools here, names, but many of them are actually available for anybody to use, so you can use them in Azure as well. Lastly, we are very much partner-centric. This slide, which is building slowly behind me, gives you a sampling of the Azure application ecosystem out there. This is a sampling, guys. There's something called the Azure Marketplace. You can go to it right now. And you'll find out many of those applications already pre-configured and ready for your use. They span the spectrum from very high-end systems. You can look at the left-hand corner, for example, big high-end ERP applications, database systems, network virtual appliances, middleware, specialized applications, various Linux versions, you name it. We work very closely with our partner ecosystem to make sure that their applications, their middleware, their appliances run very well in Azure as well. Because again, we know your system runs all these things as well. Most of the logos I showed you here are, or the slides that have logos on them are subsets of what we actually have. So I encourage you to go to azure.com and see what there was in there as well. Okay, guys, I've been talking quickly. I'm basically almost done. I want to just recap the digital transformation that we see the industry is going through. We see basically companies looking at ways to engage their customers, regardless where they may be. Therefore, a global platform is what we really need to reach your customers. This global network I mentioned to you, the global nature of our platform is what you need. Otherwise, how can you be a global company? is to empower your employees. And many of us are no longer sitting in an office all day. We are all over the place. We are mobile. We need access to data. We need access to information. That's why we have to empower our employees. We have to optimize operations. And the scenarios of operations, if you will, or production, span many wide spectrums. You know them more than we do. And lastly, the next step, after you do all of that, is to transform your products, to open up new scenarios. And the next session after this one will show you examples of companies, local companies, and the scenarios they have implemented over Azure to transform their own products as well. Okay. With that, I want to thank you for your attention. I know Azure is a big platform, global platform, and there are many concepts here. I encourage you strongly to go through our website, our documentation. And again, thank you very much for your attention.